Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. In today's discussion, we continue our journey through the book of Romans, Paul's profound letter that lays out the foundation of Christian identity, mission, and faith. Our focus today is on Romans 1:6, which says, "And you also are among those Gentiles who are called to belong to Jesus Christ." Romans 1:6. This verse may seem short, but it carries immense theological weight. It speaks of inclusion, identity, and belonging, three truths that define who we are as followers of Jesus. So today, let's talk about what it means to be called to belong to Jesus Christ, how this shaped the identity of the early Roman believers, and how it speaks powerfully to us in our world today. Inclusion of the Romans, the universality of God's call. Let's begin by looking at the context of this verse. Paul has just spoken in verse 5 about receiving grace and apostleship to call all Gentiles to obedience that comes from faith for Christ's name's sake. Now in verse 6 he makes it personal, and you also are among those Gentiles who are called to belong to Jesus Christ. Here, Paul is affirming that the Roman believers, many of whom were Gentiles, are fully included in the people of God. This was radical. In the first century, many Jews viewed themselves as the exclusive people of God. Yet Paul declares that the same divine call now extends beyond Israel to include the nations. This reminds us that the gospel is universal. It transcends boundaries of ethnicity, language, and culture. God's invitation to salvation and belonging is open to all, to everyone who believes. So when Paul says you also, he's emphasizing inclusion. The Roman Christians, and by extension us today, are part of the same redemptive story. Now, let's consider what it truly means to be called to belong to Jesus Christ, called to belong, a relationship of identity and intimacy. Now, I want us to talk about this powerful phrase, called to belong to Jesus Christ. In Greek, the phrase literally means called of Jesus Christ, those who belong to him by virtue of his call. This isn't merely an invitation, it's a divine calling, an effectual summons that draws us into relationship with Christ. Belonging to Jesus is not about religious membership, it's about relational ownership. It means that our lives are no longer our own, we are His. This belonging gives believers a deep sense of identity and security. We live in a world where many people struggle with questions like, who am I? Where do I fit in? What gives my life meaning? But Paul answers all of that here. You belong to Christ. That's your truest identity, not your nationality, your job, or your social status, but your relationship with Jesus. This sense of belonging is both humbling and liberating. It means we are loved, chosen, and secure in Him. Identity in Christ, a new foundation for life. Next, let's explore the issue of identity that flows from this belonging. Paul's statement to the Gentile believers in Rome is not just theological, it's deeply personal and cultural. These were people living in a city defined by power, empire, and social class. Identity was often shaped by status, citizenship, and wealth. But Paul tells them that their true identity is not found in Caesar's empire. It's found in Christ's kingdom. To be called to belong to Jesus Christ means to experience a complete transformation of identity, a new way of seeing yourself and the world. For the Roman believers, this was a call to turn from pagan idols, false gods, and worldly loyalties, and to live as citizens of God's kingdom. For us today, it means the same. Our identity is not determined by culture, career, race, or popularity. It's rooted in our relationship with Jesus. And when our identity is secure in Him, we become free to love, serve, and live with confidence, because we know whose we are. The church, a community of the called. Now, let's consider what this means for the church as a whole. Paul's words remind us that the church is not a human organization or social club. It is a community of the called, those who belong to Jesus Christ. This belonging is what unites us. It's not our background, culture, or preferences, it's Christ Himself. That means the church should reflect God's divine inclusivity. It's a place where people from every race, culture, and language find belonging in Jesus. In a divided world, the church must stand as a community of reconciliation, showing that in Christ there is neither Jew nor Gentile, slave nor free, male nor female, Galatians 3:28. Our unity in Christ should be stronger than anything that divides us in society. Theological and practical implications. Now, I want us to reflect on the theological and practical implications of this verse. 1. The church as a community of the called, Romans 1:6, reminds us that the church exists because God calls people to himself. We're not self-made believers, we are divinely summoned. 2. The universal call of God. The gospel is for all, regardless of background, ethnicity, or culture. This challenges any exclusivity in our attitudes or church communities. 3. Identity and belonging. Our truest identity is not found in what we do, but in whose we are. We belong to Christ, and that belonging gives us purpose, value, and direction. 4. Christ-centered life. Being called to belong means Christ is at the center of everything. Our decisions, values, and relationships should all flow from that belonging. Contemporary relevance. Now let's consider how this verse applies to our world today. Cultural and ethnic diversity. In a multicultural world, this verse reminds us that the church is meant to reflect heaven's diversity. Our primary identity is not cultural, but spiritual. We belong to Christ. Countercultural identity. Today's culture often tells us to define ourselves by our achievements, posse, echelons, or popularity. But Paul's words challenge that. True identity is found in belonging to Jesus, not in chasing validation from the world. Evangelistic motivation. When we understand that we are called to belong to Christ, it ignites a passion to share that calling with others. We invite others not to a religion, but to a relationship, to find belonging in Him. Assurance for the struggling. For those who feel disconnected or uncertain about their purpose, Romans 1:6 brings assurance. You are called, chosen, and cherished by Christ. You belong to Him. So today, we've seen that Romans 1:6 is much more than a greeting. It's a declaration of identity, inclusion, and divine belonging. Paul reminds us that the call of God is universal. Our identity is rooted in belonging to Christ. And the church is a community of the called. This truth speaks directly to our deepest human need, the need to belong, and in Christ that longing is fulfilled. If this message has encouraged you, please give this video a thumbs up so YouTube can recommend it to others. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and join the discussion in the comments below. Let's continue the conversation. What does belonging to Jesus mean to you personally? How does your identity in Christ shape the way you live and relate to others? Share your reflections in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for our next episode as we explore Romans 1:7, where Paul addresses the beloved saints in Rome called to be holy. Until next time, remember this: you are called, chosen, and you belong to Jesus Christ.